Saturday. It feels like it's not Saturday today. I feel like I've, it's the new year, so I think we're all a little bit off there. But anyways, welcome everybody. Today is January 2nd, 2021. Let's just hope that today or this year is better than 2020. Not a great year. Nice to see you guys in the chat room. Log in to continue. What the heck? I will say hi to Timothy Hooker. Leonard is here. Daniel's here. Nice to see you. Let's talk some baseball. Today we're going to talk closers. And let's just get right to it. I just want to check a couple things to make sure real quick that it's all working fine. Sound and video is good. Good afternoon. Okay. You ready to talk some closers, dude? Let's go. First, I have to reach out and say to Malpal, what are you doing? It's time for Saturday baseball. 1 second. Baseball time. Okay. All right. So we did a mock draft. As you guys already know, Lenny talked a lot about it over the week, and I wasn't supposed to put up the grid, the draft grid, and I'm not really sure if I'm allowed to put it up still. But then Douglas and I did a show on New Year's Eve and talked about a few different things, talked about some mock drafts and like what we've noticed in the mock drafts that we've done so far. It is definitely time for fantasy baseball. It is time to get ready for next season. Football is pretty much over for fantasy. And of course, this year is going to be just unlike any other year. But the closer situation is really intriguing because, I mean, you can look at it as a bad thing or a good thing, but many closers or, closers from in previous seasons, they're free agents this year. There's a ton of free agent closers. There's a ton of potential closers. And how do you navigate that in the draft? And where do you decide to start drafting closers? What we have so far for this coming season is, oh, my nose is running. The NFBC ADP so far, average draft position at the NFBC. We have that can tell us kind of like where certain players are going. The closers are all over the board. If you can, I'm sure that it's not a surprise, but like literally all over the place. You could draft a closer as early as, the third or fourth round. And a lot of these closers that we're going to talk about today aren't even being drafted in most 12-team leagues. I think that, one of the closers that I drafted in this serious mock draft that we did, I drafted both Brandon Kinsler and Hansel Robles. I don't know what I was thinking about Hansel Robles because I am not a fan of him. And I've already been screwed over by him before. I mean, I had him when I thought he was going to be the closer in Texas. I had him when I thought he was going to be the closer in LA. And of course, he was a free agent when we did this draft. So, I waited quite a long time to get closers. My first closer came very late. And I think that going forward, because I'm not a fan of spending a lot of money on a closer, I really feel like in auction drafts, you can have much more of a strategic approach because you will notice no matter who, forget the names, forget the quality, forget how well they're actually going to perform, and just talk about when in an auction draft closers are drafted, and it really matters as far as what you're going to have to pay for them. So let's say the best closer, whatever, the earliest, most expensive closer, all the closers that go early are going to be more expensive than you should want to pay for them. If you wait a while in auctions, you can wait strategically until people start to run out of money. They've already got closers, now they're working on something else. Getting and even throwing out a closer when it's your turn to do the bidding, nominate a player. It's your turn to nominate a player. Throw out a good closer. Throw out one that is going to bring in money. And, it's all about getting them to spend money. It could backfire, though. You got to be very careful of that. It can definitely backfire on you. So, it's probably not a good idea to throw out closers if you're not really ready to have them on your team, and you should never throw out a closer for more than you think they're worth. But there is a strategy involved in getting other teams to spend money. You could have the same quality of catcher for $8 as you could get earlier in the draft for like $15. And believe me, that $8, that $7 difference, it matters so much when it comes to late in your draft. You think about the difference in quality of player that you can get in an auction draft for $7. I mean, you could even split it up over a couple different closers. So my goal is always to try to spend just enough to compete in the saves category. Like, you don't have to win the saves category. In fact, it's a lot of times you'll see that the guy who wins the league is not really the guy with all the closers. However, it's a good way to keep your ERA down, your whip down. Nowadays, you could even draft. I would recommend actually drafting a bullpen guy over a bad starting pitcher. We used to talk about innings and eating innings and like, oh yeah, he's an innings eater, blah, blah, blah. But like, that is not good anymore. The more innings, the more effect it's going to have on your overall ERA and your whip. And so you really want to try to avoid any guy just because he, Robbie Ray is a good one. I'm not a fan, even though I know you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get like a full season of innings. You're going to get a couple hundred strikeouts. So anybody that you draft, that is lacking in strikeouts, Robbie Ray, you know what you're getting out of him, but you're also getting, you don't really know what you're getting. You're going to get strikeouts from him, but you don't know what your ERA is going to look like. You don't know what your whip is going to look like. And you definitely don't know how many wins on any pitcher. So really, for the closers, my point is, I learned some stuff when I was putting together this show, and that's why I'm a little bit late today. I thought if I'm going to do closers, I'm going to actually like take a good look at it, go through the closer situation. And so let's get started. Of course, the first place I start is the baseball forecaster, because I like to see what the trends are, what's been going on recent seasons. The one thing I learned today that I didn't know before, and maybe everybody else pretty much already knows this, but you cannot tell a closer by what he does in the minor leagues. In fact, closers in the minor leagues are very rarely ever, first of all, they're very rarely even ever successful in the major leagues, because the managers for the minor leagues, the coaches in the minors, they assign that role to pitchers that they do not have high hopes for. And actually, the average age closer in the minor league is 27. So it's pretty much like just a wasteland of a position in the minor league. So looking at closers in the minors and expecting them to do that at the major league level is probably not a good idea. They usually, closers will start their career as a starting pitcher, and the reason that they usually get shipped off into the closing role is because, or into the bullpen at least, is because they can't really develop a third good pitch. So it's a lot of times it's guys that have, just a couple good pitches. They can't make it late in games. They're just not successful as a starting pitcher. But most all closers, like give or take a few here and there, most all of them start out as starting pitchers, and eventually they end up in the bullpen for whatever reason. So the bottom line is, don't look at the minor leagues and say, okay, this is what's going to happen in the major leagues, because the closers in the minors, they're really not good pitchers. From 1990 to 2004, there was 280 20 save seasons in the minor leagues. Guess how many of those came up to the majors and actually ended up to be the closer? It says over that period, only 13 pitchers ever saved 20 games in the majors. That's all the years combined. So like only 13 out of 280 20 save seasons ended up as a closer in the major leagues. That's just bad stats. Okay. Like if you go just more recently from 2006 to 2020, there were 177 20 save seasons in the minors, and 2 of those became major league closers. One of them was, I believe one of them is Hansel Robles, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. No, Craig Kimbrell and AJ Ramos. That was in 2012. 2010 was Kimbrell. But every other year from 2006 on, there's not been any. So that's, that's what it is. The elements of good success. It's such a volatile position, and it's really hard to find out, like if a guy gets 30 saves this year, what's the chances of him getting 30 saves next year? What's the chance of him even being the closer? It's just volatile, right? But there's a couple things that the baseball forecaster recommends looking at to kind of like, project whether how many saves, how good of a closer they're going to be, or like whatever next year. Talent, raw skills, of course, his ability to strike batters out, which is like falls in command and control, and obviously low walks, but also opportunity. Even more important than talent is opportunity. The fact those are two obvious things, but a couple other things that you can look at. Number one, Lenny always talks about this all the time. I'm not a big believer in this, but obviously it's true because the numbers don't lie. Being a right-handed pitcher is going to give you a much better chance to remain as the closer on a team. It just is the way it is. And I hate to say it because some of my favorite pitchers are lefties, but they just typically do not fit in as the closer. Lenny is probably sitting in his chair right now. Are you sitting there cheering right now? Because he's told me this a million times. Like the lefty, it's kind of like just avoid the lefty closer. I hate to do that. I really have a problem with it. But the bottom line is that's the truth. Lefties are not typically great closers. However, there are a few lefties exceptions that we're going to talk about today. In fact, that actually also strike out. They strike out both right and left-handed hitters as just as good as the other. So there are exceptions to the rule. So it says the saves history is another one to try to figure out about. Pitchers with 20 or more saves in 1 year, only 67.5% earn 20 or more saves in the following year. But the numbers, obviously the more saves you got last year, the better chance you're going to have of keeping your job, because you don't rack up that many saves if you're bad. Like you will get kicked out of the closer role immediately if you're not good. So the lefties, right? The lefty situation, it says that even though they're not typically closers, that they're good to own if they have talent but no opportunity. That's obviously it's better to own a pitcher that has talent and no opportunity than to have a pitcher that has opportunity and no talent, because opportunity is only going to last for so long. And I mean, if you don't have talent, you have guys like Sam Dyson who had obvious flaws in his numbers. You can see by looking at, if you take like 5 seconds to look at Sam Dyson, you could see he's got major problems, and those just are not going to pan out. So like, obviously talent is more concrete and more easier to read than opportunity. However, it's not to say that, you can't develop talent, but Sam Dyson, Brad Ziegler, and Gene Gomez, all three of those guys are examples that they give as far as just high risk situations. The last thing you want is a guy in your active line, in your active fantasy roster that is hurting you and absolutely, contributing nothing. It's just, forget it. You might as well have nobody there, Age is another thing. Closers are most likely to keep their jobs right around age 27. For longtime closers, their growing career saves total more than offset the negative impact of their advanced ages. So guys like, some of these closers that you picture in your head as like super old. I want to say Greg Holland is one of them, but he actually might be kind of old. Let me check him out. He's 35. But there's closers that have been around for a while that we're going to talk about today, because I noticed a couple today that I'm like, whoa, that guy's only 30 for real. So pay attention to their age. It's not like the end all be all, but it does matter for sure. Older closers without a long history of racking up saves tend to be bad candidates for retaining their roles the next season. So like, if a guy, you look at his history and he's got more blown saves than saves, over the past 5, 6, 7 years, you got to pay attention to that, because I see so many times like, oh, this is the new closer wherever. And it's like, look at how many blown saves this guy has. He obviously has had these opportunities and he can't get the job done. You know, I'm not going to hold against him like a couple blown saves here and there, but for real, you have to pay attention to that, because there's a difference between being a setup guy and a closer, and the difference in the amount of pressure that's on you, the difference in the type of pitches that you throw, the difference in your whole approach is different as a setup guy and a closer. And some pitchers just are not meant to be closers. Okay. So the ERA was they said that the ERA had very little importance when you're trying to evaluate like next year's projections. Being a right-handed pitcher increased the odds of retaining the closer's role by 9% over lefties. You have a 9% better chance of keeping your job if you're a right-handed closer. Okay. The 10 best closers. Okay, so how good are we at predicting closers? We're not very good, I have to say. The 10 best closers during 1989 through 2007, 90% saved at least 20 games during the following season. So 90%, that's pretty good. You could say out of the top 10 closers from last year, I just don't think it's the same. Like last year, we had the worst. We did horrible projecting closers last year. That's what I'm trying to say. Like 70% of the closers that we drafted for saves did not perform anywhere near what we expected them to. And they said that a lot of the reason for that, because that's the lowest percentage that we got right since they started keeping track in fantasy. And they said that a lot of the reasoning is because their rosters were so much bigger and they just had so many more choices to throw in as a closer that it's like almost a guarantee that the stats projections wise, we're not going to be that great. A team having an established closer in a given year does not affect how many of that team's wins are saved in the next year. Really, it comes down to it. People believe that if a team is horrible, like the Pirates, okay, that they're not going to get as many save opportunities. So people say, okay, I'm going to draft a closer from a team that's going to win games, right? But a lot of times you'll find that the teams that win the most games are winning games by such a large margin that you don't get a save. So you have to win the game by less than 2 or by less than 3 runs, I believe. So, you know, it has to be a close win. And the thing is that yes, the better teams have better chance of, they do get more save opportunities, but it's not enough to be saying, well, I'm going to draft this guy because he's on a better team. It's just not enough. You have to look at other things before that and make that one of the lowest things on your priority scale when you're looking at closers. Just because the guy is on a bad team does not mean that he's not going to get opportunity, especially if he's on a crappy team, but he has no competition for the job and he does have talent. It does say that, you know, trying to figure out next year you can't figure out how many save opportunities a team is going to get next year based on what they got this year. They really say that about half of the team's wins there's a save opportunity. It's 45 to 55%. So, and there's no correlation between what happens last year and what happens this year. It says 50 to 54% is the percentage of wins that are saved. It doesn't matter if the saves were concentrated in the hands of one closer, top closer, or a whole bunch of closers like Tampa Bay. It doesn't really change the number of saves, the number of wins that offer a save opportunity. So it says a team having an established closer in a given year does not affect how many of that team's wins are actually save opportunities the next season. A top closer, a guy with 40 or more saves, which like doesn't even happen anymore, has a significantly greater chance to retain his role in the subsequent season. That's kind of obvious. 2/3 of closers with lots of saves keep their jobs, and 3/4 of those with very little saves do not keep their jobs. So, I mean, there's something to that. So let's get started. Like Hansel Robles, I was going to go over a little bit of the news for the day, just current news of what's going on. You know, Hansel Robles signed with Minnesota Twins. $2 million. I don't know what they're paying him that much. He's just not very good. He did post okay. 2019, he wasn't bad. This is why you fall prey to these guys. They have a good season, one season, and then the next year they're just crap. Like last year, 2019 heading into last season, he had 23 saves for the Angels. He had a 2.48 ERA. And then last year, he was just horrible. He had a 10 ERA, over 10. It was very bad. His whip was 1.74. His underlying stats are horrible. Like, I mean, the only thing that would make a fantasy person attracted to him is his strikeout rate. He strikes out quite a few batters, so it's easy to say, okay, he strikes out, gosh, look at his strikeouts. 10 batters per 9 innings, Even last year, he struck out almost 11 batters per 9 innings, but he's walking way crazy amounts of batters, which fall right in line with his history. He had one good season where he walked less than 2 batters per 9 innings. That was in 2019. The rest of the time since 2015, this guy is walking batters like crazy, way too many. Last year, it was over 5 batters per 9 innings. And before that, every other season is like mid-4. So he's walking 4 or 5 batters every 9 innings he pitches. And that is just going to crush every, it's just going to crush your percentage stats for real. And plus, he's giving up home runs. Like his home run, he's always given up too many home runs, except for 2019. It's like he was on crazy drugs or something that year that made him excellent. He walked less than, or he gave up less than a home run per 9 innings. Now it's like he's giving up 2, and that's horrible. That just will not keep you around. Do not draft this guy. Obviously, the Twins already have a closer in Taylor Rogers, and he's actually had a bad season last year, I think, but he's actually a very good closer. And I think that if let's see where he's going. Rogers. His brother, too. I like his brother, too. So it looks like Taylor Rogers right now is going 137th overall. The earliest that he's gone is 72nd, and the latest is 215. The catcher thing. So in my notes here, I kept track of like the average draft position, and then I also kept track of the earliest and the latest that these players are going, because I think, especially given that we just started drafting and stuff, it's kind of important to pay attention, like the earliest and the latest. How many numbers are between this? How many rounds are between the earliest that he's getting drafted and the latest that he's getting drafted? And think about, if you see this player at a certain point in the draft, is it, how late do you let Taylor Rogers sit out there before you draft him, right? Do you draft him that early? Heck no, I'm not drafting any closer 72nd overall. Okay, I'm just not going to draft any closer in round 6. So, okay, given that, Taylor Rogers is good. He's not losing his job. Hansel Robles he is right now for fantasy owners, he could be completely ignored. Totally. Let's talk about somebody who actually should not be ignored. And his ADP right now is 253 overall. His earliest going is 145th overall. And the latest that he's gone is 526. So you can imagine the difference between rounds in this person. This pitcher is Atlanta, Will Smith. And the thing about it is, this guy was really good. He was very good in San Francisco. It was funny. He was the closer in San Francisco. Then Mark Melanson and him. Well, no, he came to San Francisco. I don't really know. Mark Melanson was the San Francisco closer. They ended up sharing saves. They had saves, but and then they both moved to Atlanta, right? They were sharing. It was said that Mark Melanson was going to start the season out 2020 as the closer, and Will Smith would be the bullpen guy, right? I think everybody kind of like underestimated that calculation, because they figured like Will Smith is good pitcher and Mark Melanson is kind of like getting older in his older age, whatever, and he's just not as good. He had suffered from serious arm problems for more than one season. And so we all kind of went into last season thinking that they would most likely share save opportunities, even though they did say that Mark Melanson was going to be the closer. Well, anyways, Mark Melanson is gone. He's not on the team anymore. Will Smith does not have any, I don't think he has any competition, but I'm not really sure that Atlanta is one of those teams to be trusted as far as like keeping one closer. I don't think they've had I can't remember the last time they had like a real bona fide. Maybe it was Greg Holland. Is that who it is? Was it Greg Holland? No, it wasn't Greg Holland. Kimbrell. It was Craig Kimbrell that used to be Atlanta. I think that was their last, like, I don't know. Anyways, the Braves. Will Smith is their closer. He's a lefty, though, so if that means anything to you, he's a lefty. However, I would say that his talent is most important. The fact that he's going so late in draft, definitely it's going to inch up. He's going to inch up the draft board as we get closer into, mock drafting and drafting our teams. He is going to go earlier than 253, I believe, because he is the closer. That's all there is to it. He was one of the best closers in 2019. He had 34 saves for the Giants with a 2.76 ERA and a 103 WHIP, 96 strikeouts in 65 innings. That's huge for strikeouts. He absolutely huge for strikeouts. His strikeout per 9 is over 10 every year. It's over 10. He never went below 10 in a season. His home runs, though, were horrible last year. And look, before last year, it was not horrible, but the fact that he was pitching in San Francisco and his home runs increased quite significantly, it's a bad sign, right? So then he goes to Atlanta and his home runs were out of control. He only pitched 16 innings last year, okay? So take that into consideration when I'm saying this. But before he went to San Francisco and even his first season in San Francisco, his home runs allowed per 9 innings were like 0.5. They were really good. Then in San Francisco, when he had that great season, 65 innings, like 90-something strikeouts, like his home runs per 9 spiked up to 1.38. And then last year it was 3.94, and it is a little scary saying, okay, it went from, even 1.3 is kind of high, but that's in San Francisco. And like, how many home runs are being hit in San Francisco? It's almost impossible to hit a home run there. I guess they've changed their ballpark a little bit. So they're actually, one of our friends lives there. He says that it's not going to be as much it's going to be more of a home run park than it has been, which isn't to say much. Okay. So, but either way, think about a pitcher giving up, if he's giving up 1.38 home runs in like one of the hardest home run parks in baseball, what's it going to happen when he goes to Atlanta? You can almost expect it to go up, pretty significantly. Now he's 30 years old. I don't know if we can expect a lot of difference, but last year his FIP was over 7. I really think that this is one of the cases where you can say last year was an outlier. 2020 was an outlier for this guy. I think that he was probably flustered and frustrated because he wasn't given the opportunities to close out games. I think he likes being the closer. Most pitchers would rather be the closer than the bullpen guy. It's way sexier, cooler, whatever. Anyway, he's been successful as a closer. They paid him $39 million for 3 seasons. That was entering last year. So he still has 2 more seasons on his contract, and he's going to get the opportunities. The one thing about him being a lefty, I put in my notes, yes, he's a lefty, but he also does handle right-handed batters nearly as well as other good right-handed relievers do. So I don't think it's going to affect him too much. The fact that he's a lefty, we'll see. Okay, let's see. He's got 2 pitches, relies mainly on his fastball and slider. Let me look at his velo. His velocity is 92.6 mile an hour for the fastball. Nothing like super exciting, but definitely not bad. It's his slider that is really the pitch that strikes out batters. That's really what he uses to strike out the batters. He does have a curveball and a changeup. He doesn't use them very often. He missed all of 2017 rehabbing from Tommy John surgery. So this 2019, when he pitched 65 innings, that was the most that he had pitched since 2014. So he's, ready to go and completely worked his way back from Tommy John. I don't know if that says anything nowadays, but, looking at a pitcher and saying, do I choose between the guy that's already had and rehabbed from Tommy John, or do I choose the guy that has yet to have Tommy John? And, I feel like every year they pitch, their chances of getting Tommy John are just that much bigger. But there's so many Tommy Johns nowadays, I don't know. I don't feel that way about Bauer. Anyway, there's no competition for this guy in Atlanta. So if you're going to be a guy that drafts closers late, I'm telling you, this guy going later than pick 200 is pretty significant. Let's move on to Baltimore. Baltimore's got some questions in. Hi, Malpal. Nice to see you, dude. It says, spend a total. Lenny, this is coming from Lenny. Malpal asked the question, how many solid real closers can we pencil in right now? No, not very many at all, actually. Like, I would say maybe 5 or 6 that you could say are going to have the job, like, heading into the season, that are reliable in fantasy. Aroldis Chapman, like even Josh Hader. I don't think Josh Hader is a great closer. I think he's better as a setup guy, and I don't think that the Brewers, if they have another option, I don't think they're going to leave him in there as a closer. I believe that Hader could lose his job at any given moment, and that's probably just me, but take it for what it is. But can you name the closer on any team in the NL West besides Kenley Jansen? Well, I could say that San Francisco has like 3 closers, and the Padres have a couple choices. I think theirs is easier to narrow down than San Francisco, but I also think San Francisco has Taylor Rogers' brother, Tyler Rogers. He could be something special, and I think he's going to get a chance. So, one of the things I did notice that some of these closers, James Karinchak was one of my favorite closers going into last season because he was so under the radar, and we figured that they would trade. We figured that he would eventually end up as a closer, but he was, impressive with his strikeout numbers, blah, blah, blah. Karinchak is going way too high in drafts right now. If you look at the ADP at NFBC, it's 108 overall. And the earliest that Karinchak has gone is 68th overall. Are you kidding me? And the latest is 200. So, I mean, most of the closers that we're going to talk about today are they're going past way later than pick 200. And that's where I think that you should be targeting these closers. You should not be targeting these closers at ADP 108. That is absurd for a guy that has very little experience. Yes, he's going to be the closer in Cleveland, but come on, man. That's way too high for an unknown. That's just my opinion. Anyway, Lenny says that you should spend $30 for 2 closers in auction draft. He used to say don't spend any money on closers in auction draft. I really am sure of this. Right? And he says, on a $5, spend a total of $30 for 2 closers on a $5 starting pitcher. I don't know what that means. He likes my Barr pick. Okay. Don't pay for closers. I do think you need to pay for closers. And Lenny has actually he's changed his mind on that. I do think that you need to pay for closers. You cannot end up with, that's just my opinion. What's worked for Lenny over the years, what he does now, I think that speaks for itself. The fact that he actually does spend some money on closers now, and he can't really deny it that much. But he doesn't spend crazy on closers. He really feels like putting that money towards a really good starting pitcher is where the actual strategy is. Instead of spending $18 on a closer or like $15 on a closer, you could spend $8 or $5 on a closer, and you could use the rest of that money to invest in guys like Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole is not my choice. It's Lenny's choice, but okay. Guys like that, Jacob deGrom and those. And the closing situation is really up in arms more than it's been since I can remember. So we have a lot of ifs and, a lot of question marks in the closer spot. So I do think that the Padres will get a closer. Why would they spend all this money? Why would they make all these moves? They're like the only one that I can say that I really believe are actually going to invest, but more than one team are going to be adding closers because, like I said earlier, there are so many free agent closers with closer experience that, I mean, the longer that it goes, the closer it gets towards the season, the cheaper that they're going to be, the cheaper that they're going to be able to sign them for. And so therefore, you know, I really do believe that teams are kind of broke right now. They don't want to spend a lot of money, but you can't go into a season without a closer. You just cannot win. Look at Boston. They're the perfect example. After they won the World Series in 2018, they entered 2019. They just didn't bother fixing the end of their bullpen. You know, they just didn't bother getting a closer. I don't know what they were thinking. And it did not play out well for them. And you cannot get through the playoffs without a decent bullpen. And, you know, even if you have more than one possible closer, like, I mean, the Yankees have multiple closers. The best teams usually have the deepest bullpens. And I don't know. There's something to be said about that. So if San Diego expects to win, they will invest in a closer. I do believe that they are ready to win. They feel like they're ready to win. And just every other team that doesn't have a closer right now, a lot of these closer situations are going to change, you know. Anyway, moving on. Let's move on. Baltimore's got choices. Like, I think that Hunter Harvey was expected to be the closer heading into last season. Hunter Harvey has very little major league experience, but even that being said, he was drafted heading into 2020 as the closer for Baltimore, even though Michael Givens was still there. And as much as we know Michael Givens is not great talent-wise, he gets the job done as the closer in Baltimore, and he, you know, that says something. Anyway, in 2019, here comes Hunter Harvey. Excellent for 6 innings, though. You have to remember 6 innings, right? He struck out 11 batters in 6 innings. We were all, even though he walked 4 batters, okay, in 6 innings. He had a 1.42 ERA. Okay, and so because of that, we said, oh, here's a guy that's going to strike out bunch. He is going to take over for Michael Givens, and the Baltimore Orioles are definitely going to, you know, he's the future closer. I don't know if that's the case anymore. First of all, he gets injured a lot. Like, he had a decent 2019 season. He threw 82 innings. But that was the most innings that he had thrown. In fact, the 2 prior seasons between 2015 and 2018, okay, that's 3 seasons, he only threw 63 innings total at all the levels. So the 82 innings that he threw in 2019 total, that was career high. So then last year he only threw 8 2/3 innings. Okay, we have another problem with his injuries, and he has a good fastball and a good curveball, a mediocre changeup, and a shaky command. That's probably why he's a closer to begin with. But his strikeout rate jumped from 23.7% as a Double-A starter to 31.4% at Triple-A in the bullpen. A lot of pitchers get better when they get thrown in the bullpen. 42.3% strikeout rate in the majors, which is not, I mean, it's not something to be believed in for real. Anyway, he still has a chance to get saves in Baltimore because the competition is not there. Obviously, he still hasn't gained the experience necessary to even believe in this guy. But look, his draft position is, I would keep an eye on him, just like the other 2 guys that I'm going to talk about for Baltimore, because I think it's important to know that there's 3 potential closers in Baltimore, and these are late, you know, in-game chances that you take on players. And I also read today in the Forecaster, it said, instead of focusing on profit in the end game, focus on players that will not hurt your numbers. So avoiding pitfalls is better than trying to target profit in the late round picks. That's what it said. So take that from what you will. Anyway, last year his ERA in 8 2/3, it was 4 over 4. That's probably more like it. He we don't really know if he has a problem with walks. We just don't know anything about this guy. What we do know is that, look, in 2019, like I just read you, his strikeout rate was way outrageous. It was 43%. That's not even possible. We should have known that. But even worse is the fact that he only struck out 6 batters per 9 innings last year after he struck out over 15 per 9 the year before that. So we don't really know what to expect there too. He's he's a box of questions is what he is right now. They also have Tanner Scott. The biggest issue for this guy, okay, he's 26. He'll be 26 years old this year. He's got pretty good fastball is 96.5 miles an hour. His problem is his walks, and that definitely can improve with experience and age. So he also strikes out a lot of batters, and he just walks too many batters. So he's another one in line for saves in Baltimore. Out of all 3 of these guys, I would say that Tanner Scott is probably my favorite choice of all. I didn't even check to see what his ADP is. Let me see. It is 625th overall, which means he's not being drafted in any league that you're in or I'm in at this point. So seriously, the earliest that he's gone is 474th overall, but he absolutely has a chance of getting saved just as much as the next 2 guys. You also have Cesar Valdez, who's actually listed as the closer in at RotoWire. He actually finished the season last year really good. They threw him in as for 3 save opportunity, and he was perfect through all 3. Then you find out how old he is. He's 36 this year. And do you know him? Do you remember his name ever being talked about in fantasy circles? Probably not. He's just hasn't been known, and he only has 102. Wait, let me make sure that's right. No, not 102. Is this Cesar Valdez? Baltimore, right? Cesar Valdez? I don't even have his stats in front of me. What I do know is that he was excellent. He didn't even allow a run for the last this is crazy because I know, hold on a minute. This is crazy because what I did for him was look at his stats for the month of September, and his stats for the month of September were unbelievably good. And when he was actually given opportunity to save games, he was very successful and efficient, and he was good. So I think that I think he probably will enter this next season as the guy with the most chance of getting saves, but I don't believe that will last for him. He's 35 years old and he hasn't had any success so far. So, okay. But his pitching stats for the month of September last year were excellent and definitely worth talking about. He had a 1.26 ERA across 14 and a third innings. All 3 of his saves came in the month of September. So those 3 guys. Okay. How about Daniel Bard? What a great story for Daniel Bard. You know, I've been a fan of his for a long time. I really, he's used to be Boston guy. So Daniel Bard, Cesar Valdez, by the way, his ADP is 704. That's ridiculous. Okay. But I don't know. Daniel Bard, Colorado. It stinks for him that he's pitching in Colorado, but here's a guy, if you look at his numbers, you could see definite patterns. You could see that, okay, first of all, Daniel Bard, he did not pitch since 2013. He came back to the major leagues and he was very good. A remarkable comeback story for this guy, and I love it. But his velocity came back. All of his stats were right in line with the stats that he had before he got injured. And you could see there was 2 years in Daniel Bard's stat line, 2012 and 2013, where you could definitely see that they are outliers compared to his other seasons. He came up to the majors in 2009. He was 24 then, but look, combined total. So yes, he's older. He's also 35, but he only has 282 innings on his arm in his career at the major league level. That, he doesn't have a lot of work on his arm. So, whatever that means, I do think that obviously age is going to catch up to you, no matter how many innings you have on your arm. But my bottom line is that Daniel Bard, you saw a lot of great underlying statistics that you saw when he was successful before he got hurt in 2000, and he did get hurt in 2012. He's never pitched it. Obviously, he's a closer. I just think he was turning into a great pitcher when he got hurt, and it took him a lot of years and a lot of heartache to get back. So I give him a lot of credit. His ERA is going to be in the mid threes. It's not excellent, but his freaking fastball is almost 100 miles an hour. It's still almost 100 miles an hour. So, what does that say? Because one of the things that you see immediately when you pitcher starts to show signs of aging is that the velocity goes down, and for him to regain his 97 mile an hour velocity from 2010, 2011 is a great sign. And it's something, that absolutely should be noted. He very rarely ever gives up home runs. He doesn't have a problem with walks. I love Daniel Bard. I drafted him in the mock that we did. His ADP is 337. That's round 28 in a 12-team league. And the earliest that he's gone is 185th overall. I would not draft him that early, but definitely a target 100% in late round, like late in drafts, definitely a late round closer target for me. At least you start the season with him as the closer in Colorado. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I know that's definitely a knock. When a guy is a pitcher in Colorado, it's a bad sign overall. But look, some pitchers are not that bad. Daniel Barr was excellent. He had 6 save opportunities, and he was successful all 6 of them. Not only that, but his fastball spin rate, think of this. His spin rate ranks in the 99th percentile, okay? He's, like we talked about already, he does strike out batters, a lot of batters. He strikes out. You just, so yeah, 99 percentile for his fastball spin. And he's got a swing and miss slider. He's a ground ball, like not a crazy ground ball pitcher. Like, I don't know, Aaron Bummer, I think, is like 70% ground balls, but he's not like that. He's like 50% ground balls, which is fine. He led Colorado in saves. He had a 3.65 ERA, and he struck out 27 and walked 10. That's not even that good, actually, but he doesn't typically have a problem with walks, so I do like Daniel Bard. He's going to be 36 in June. But his spin rate is in the 99th percentile. So, okay, I am a little biased for him because I've always liked him and always rooted for him. They're projecting him to get 23 saves in 2021. That's RotoWire. Moving on, Aaron Bummer. So I also drafted Aaron Bummer in this league, in this mock draft that we did with Sirius. And Aaron Bummer, I first even noticed Aaron Bummer in Stratomatic. When we were waiting for the season to start last year, we all decided to get together and do some Stratomatic. And I think I learned a few things from that, particularly how effective relief pitchers are, because the ones that we don't use in fantasy, they don't get looked at because we don't count, there's no stats for middle relievers. However, Aaron Bummer, I think this guy is a lefty. He is a lefty. He's had some issues with his biceps, but I do look, the White Sox, what are they going to do? Are they going to have Aaron Bummer as their closer in Chicago? Because they're, the closer that they had last year is not there anymore. I got to look at the depth charts. Was it Colomé that was their closer last year? Let's see. Anyway, the White Sox are going to be a good team. We know that. The White Sox. I think Luis Robert is being neglected in drafts right now. I could tell you that. Anyway, Aaron Bummer, it doesn't seem like he has a lot of competition. But again, there's a bunch of free agent closers on the market. And teams like this, the chances are decent that they're going to invest in a closer before the season starts. So don't be like, oh, you told me to draft Aaron Bummer, and now he's a reliever again. Like he's not the closer. I think that Aaron Bummer is going to help you out in a lot of different ways, though. So one good thing about these, some of these closers is that, yes, maybe they're not going to be a closer when the season starts because they lose their job due to the fact that the team hires another closer. Okay, fine. That's going to happen, but you want to target a guy that's not going to hurt you and actually will provide decent stats. So Aaron Bummer is one of those guys, I believe. His last year, his ERA was 0.96. He only pitched 9 innings. Okay, so there you go for that. But the year before, he pitched 67 and 2/3 innings, only allowed 43 hits, no home runs. Okay, no, 4 home runs actually in 2019. It's hard to 27 holds that year. This guy is a hold monster, but I don't know, depending on where they put him, and he's not going to get a lot of wins because they don't put him in the right spot. He's like the guy right before the closer, not the guy right after the starting pitcher. There's a group of pitchers that in the baseball forecaster, they call them vultures. Vulture is the guy that they put in right after the starting pitcher. Usually they're because they steal wins from the starting pitchers because they don't have any minimums. Well, they have a minimum now, 3 batters. The starter has to go 5 innings to get a win. The reliever that comes in right after him does not have to go any number of innings. They just have to make it through 3 batters before they can get yanked out of the game. They do vulture wins, that specific reliever. But I think that it might be that because of the use of openers now that the vulture is. This totally depends on what team it is. If it's Tampa, there's probably no real vulture to target in Tampa, like vulture pitcher, because they're using openers. They're using all kinds of weird things. And I think anyway, there is something to be said about that. Aaron Bummer is a lefty. He has had troubles. Last year, he had problems with his biceps. He had only 9 appearances. He lost 7 weeks because of that. But he did have a 0.96 ERA, a 36.8% strikeout rate, a 71.7% ground ball rate. Okay. He is definitely a ground ball pitcher too. There's no doubt about it. Even it might not continue to be 70% ground balls, but it's going to be very high. He's going to be right up there leading the league in ground balls because he is absolutely a ground ball pitcher. He's the closer to start the season. He is great late. Okay, look at Aaron Bummer. What is his ADP right now? Aaron Bummer. I got him in one of the last I got him 348 overall. He's actually gone as early as 231 and as late as 486 overall, which is not even drafted in most 12-team leagues, but 348. I guess that's about right. I was thinking I would see less later, but obviously other people know that he's a good pitcher, a good reliever, very good bullpen guy. That's round 29, so you can get him in the last round. Okay, seriously, he's worth looking at. I do think they're going to bring on another closer. The next guy on my list to talk about, okay, is Toronto. Raphael Dolis, 392 overall. So round 29, 30. Round 30, he's gone as early as 246 and as late as 564. That's so many rounds in between these two. I mean, it's just crazy that the amount of rounds between their earliest and their latest pick is right now. It's crazy. I think that will stabilize as we get closer to the season. Anyway, he entered 2020 as well. Here's what happened. He wasn't very good, so he went to Japan. He was great in Japan. He had a 2.49 ERA in 4 years, okay, in Japan. And then he came back to the majors, so we didn't really know what to expect out of him, but he did have fairly good success in Japan. Doesn't really say much though, as far as how it rolls over. Anyway, he was a middle reliever for the Blue Jays, and he did get 5 save opportunities. So he was able to. He got 6 save opportunities. He was able to close out successfully 5 of those. So he was successful as a closer when Ken Giles was hurt and they needed him to fill in for Ken Giles. So he did okay. And then he had a 1.50 ERA, which is good, great. Okay, we like it. That's all we know really about this Dolis. He's 33 years old, but we don't he's only got 68 career innings at the major league level. That doesn't include Japan, of course. So while he was off, those seasons he was over in Japan, just getting experience and getting better at honing in on his craft. I like this pick. I wonder if Toronto is going to invest in another closer. I doubt it. I think that he actually has a pretty decent hold on this job. It does say one warning, says that his underlying numbers do not back up quite the level of success that he had, quite the level of dominance, to be specific in what they say. 31% strikeout rate and 50% ground ball rate should remain enough to offset a poor 14% walk rate. So what's his walks? He walked over 5 batters per 9 last year. That was his problem before he left for Japan too, by the way. He had a problem with walks. If that's the one thing, if he could actually get his walks down, he would be very good. I mean, his fastball is 95 miles an hour. What else can we say? His ERA was 1.50, but his FIP was 3.02, which is still very good. Didn't give up a lot of home runs at all. Less than 1 per 9. Never has really given up a lot of home runs, even going back to when he played for Chicago or pitched for Chicago before he went to Japan. And let's just take a look at the Blue Jays depth chart so I can make sure that he's not fighting with anybody. I don't see anybody that could take his spot. I do not see anybody. So he definitely has a handle on the closer job as of now, unless the Blue Jays hire somebody, which I don't think they will. But anyway, he has zero competition as a closer in Toronto. So that's a good one. Moving on. Raphael Iglesias. Oh, Raphael Iglesias is signed with the Angels. Well, he got traded to the Angels. So I don't even really, I can't really justify drafting him this year. He's going way too early in drafts. His ADP right now is 103. It's only going to get lower than that. It's only going to get less. The earliest that he's been drafted in NFBC so far is 64th overall, which is, you've got to be out of your mind to draft a closer at 64th overall, especially. I mean, Raphael Iglesias is a good closer, and he definitely has quality skills as a closer. He's one of the better pitchers in baseball, actually, as a closer. But that's just so early. It's too early to be drafting him. It's just too early. Cincinnati got rid of him. They needed to cut costs. He strikes out a lot of batters. His ERA is always, pretty good. I don't know. I'm just saying I would not draft him at all. Even though the numbers that you get out of him are very consistent. He had one bad season. In 2019, he had a horrible season as far as his statistics go, like 4.16 ERA. But for the most part, his career ERA is 3.15, and that includes that horrible year with a 4.16 ERA. So typically you're going to see it under 3. He doesn't walk a lot of batters. Like, he's pretty consistent. I just won't draft a closer that early. That was the point of putting him in here. Moving on, Richard Rodriguez is the next one I will talk about. He is being drafted at 216 overall. That's round 18, although he's been drafted as early as round 13, 162nd overall, and as late as round 34. So, I mean, that's a huge, 18 or 34 rounds, round 18 or round 34. Anyway, Richard Rodriguez is somebody to pay attention to. He's 30 years old, right? The last month of the season, in September, from August 30th to September 23rd, he did not allow any runs. He had 10 innings pitched. I think it was 11 games that he appeared in. So in that month, he did not allow any runs. He was excellent to end the season. That's my point. Okay. Excellent to end the season. Striking out batters, K per 9 in September was 13.5 per 9. And his walks were 2.5. So that's per 9 innings. That's acceptable completely. He struck out 34 and walked 5. in 23 and a third innings with a 2.70 ERA and an 0.86 whip. So this is Richard Rodriguez, Pittsburgh closer. Yes, I know Pittsburgh is a horrible team. This is not the time to be avoiding a pitcher just because he pitches for the Pirates. I would avoid starting pitchers that pitch for the Pirates. I really would. But in this situation, this guy, let's see what his ADP is, Richard Rodriguez. It's unbelievably low. I mean, late. You can get him really late. His ADP, I just told you, round 13 or round 34, anywhere in between those. But I guarantee he's going to go way past. I don't think he's going to go around 13. I think that's like crazy talk. That was probably an accident. Okay. Anyway, he is going to be the closer in Pittsburgh. This is another guy that I do think has a great hold on this spot. He doesn't have anybody trying to fight him for the job. The Pittsburgh Pirates are not going to be going out investing in a closer, adding anybody up from the market, and that really isn't going to affect him some. So if you draft early, whenever you draft, this guy has good talent. He has underlying numbers that say that he is a good pitcher. That's what I'm saying with this guy. I really like him. I wish in that mock draft I would have gladly taken him over frigging Hansel Robles. No doubt about it. There's just no doubt about it. He's a good pitcher. That's all there is. He's a good pitcher. He just improved across the board too. His home runs, he doesn't give up a lot of home runs anyways, but in 2019 he had a problem with home runs. He pretty much fixed it in 2020. He improved on his walks by a long shot. He was walking 3 per 9, which is still not that bad, really, totally acceptable, but less than 2 per 9 now. He struck out over 13 batters per 9 innings. This guy is absolutely somebody to be a sneaky good fantasy late round pick, no doubt about it. I think that if you get anything from this podcast, I would say that Richard Rodriguez is one thing. Raphael Dolis is another one to look at, and there might be another one or two on the list. The next one on the list is Ryan Tapera. He's a free agent. The rest of them are free agents that we're going to talk about. But Ryan Tapera, like I was reading at RotoWire, there's an article that Todd Zola did. He writes a lot of articles there, but he put the relievers into tiers, and I think he did it I really do think that this was written fairly early, maybe over a month ago. So, as things start to pan out, this article will become less and less relevant. However, I noticed in there a couple things. One is that Todd Zola considers this Ryan Tapera a great pitcher. He had him, he has him ranked in with, what tier is he in? He's in the top tier. He's in the elite tier, which caught my attention. The elite tier is usually small. He says this year it's a candidate or two shy of normal, so it's even smaller than it normally is. And he's in it. He's in there with Hader, Liam Hendricks, Aroldis Chapman, and Ryan Tapera. Why is he in there? I don't really know, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't have a problem with him too much, but I have to say I don't see the reasoning for putting him into the highest tier of closer. He did 31 strikeouts in 20 and 2/3 innings. That was a career best. 13.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. 14 strikeouts in 21 innings in 2018. So, even though last year's was excellent number of strikeouts, that was not a great year for strikeouts in 2018. I mean, that was the only season that he didn't strike out at least 9 per 9. So, okay, we can tell that he is a good strikeout guy. But, all right, his ERA is going to be in the mid-3s. Here's another interesting thing about him. I mean, this isn't going to be relevant because he's a free agent. We don't know where he's going to hit or pitch. But his home-away splits are crazy, dude. His home and away splits are crazy, and he pitched for 2 different teams, Toronto and Chicago. Okay, his ERA was 1.64 at home and 7.27 on the road, and even going back to 2018 when he pitched for different team. It was 2.25 at home and 5.34 on the road. And that's just crazy. I don't know if that is just a coincidence. Maybe it is, but we don't have a lot to go by. He is 33 years old, so he's not a youngster. His ERA has never been, I mean, he's been in the majors since 2015, right? He's had completely total, he's had 10 saves completely. 10 saves over his career, 10 saves. He has 11 blown saves over his career. That says something to me. Maybe it's not that important to you. He's had a lot of holds. He's had 41 holds over his career in the major leagues, okay? And 12 wins and 12 losses. We don't even know if he's going to be the closer, so it kind of baffles me why he would be in the category of elite closers. Maybe I'll have Todd Zola on the show and he can explain to me what he's thinking in that respect. But I figured I'd add him in here because maybe there's something that I'm missing with this. His ERA, his FIP, they're about the same. I just don't see anything that like jumps off the page at me here. 94 mile an hour fastball. Actually, his velocity increased from last year, but it just hovers right around 94, 95 miles an hour, and he is 33, so it's not going to, that's the max it's going to be. Walked over 5 batters per 9 last year. He walked a lot of batters, and he only pitched 20 innings, okay, so you can't tell that much by it, but I'm just not a huge fan, okay? Brandon Kinsler is another one I drafted in the mock draft. I guess after looking into Brandon Kinsler a little more, he's 36, so that doesn't help at all. But what to say about Kinsler? First of all, he did pitch well in Miami last year when he was coming back, but he had 12 saves and 2 blown saves. He had 2 wins, 3 losses in 24 innings. I never really noticed Brandon Kinsler until last year when Lenny said something about him, and I said, oh, you can't, big deal, Brandon Kinsler's coming back, like big deal. He was never good to begin with, but actually he wasn't horrible, and he has some things about him that I liked going into the season. For some reason, I don't have a lot of stats on him. He's a free agent, number one. Don't draft him, okay, at all if he's not signed by a team. Don't make the mistake, because 2 huge mistakes I made in that mock draft were at the very end. I just kind of lost my bearings. But the Brandon Kinsler pick and the Hansel Robles pick, those are horrible picks. Do not follow in my footsteps. This is exactly why you do mock drafts, so that you can avoid stuff like that happening in a real draft. He's never struck out a lot of hitters. It depends on where he's going, though, if he's going to be valuable. And if he does get saves, he's decent getting saves. It's like, the situation is going to determine what happens to him. But I wouldn't count him out completely. His numbers aren't going to be horrible. It's just that maybe he won't even get signed at all. So definitely wait on this guy. Don't draft him. I'm telling myself this because probably 99% of you out there wouldn't draft him to begin with. So really, I'm saying this into the mirror to myself. Okay. So anyway, that's about this. This is about this for the day. I do like Tyler Rogers in San Francisco. Absolutely. I just didn't have time to write up about him. Maybe I'll go through. There's probably another 10 closers that I could talk about if I did some more investigating into the closer situation, because there's a lot of question marks with the closers, more question marks than I've seen since I can remember playing fantasy. I think I will do another one on closers as we get closer into the towards the season. I will definitely have more to say about the closer situation. But if you guys want to talk about anything next Saturday, you should let me know, and I can brush up my knowledge on it. We could talk about it. Whatever questions that you have, you should, write them in the chat room or whatever. And I try to pay attention to the chat room, although I'm not that great at it still. I definitely will take any kind of recommendations for what you want to talk about on Saturday mornings. And we're all getting ready for baseball now. It's exciting. Let's hope they start the season on time. I can't imagine a reason why they wouldn't. And that's it. Malpal, thanks for coming and hanging out with me. And Douglas Boyle is here. Nice to see you, Douglas Boyle. I almost stole some stuff from your show. I hope you'll come on tomorrow and do those other topics that we never got to on New Year's Eve, because I decided to leave them since they were your ideas. But Douglas may talk about the minor leagues and the new spring training in Florida, the new teams that we see there. Okay. Anyway, nice to see everybody. And Leonard, I will see you soon. Hopefully Douglas will be on tomorrow, but don't forget to see George at 6:30 tomorrow night, and maybe Douglas at 5:30, hopefully. Have a great day, everybody.